Welcome to this episode of Let's Chat. I'm your host, Chris Revel, coming to you from the Cat Cave in Warwick, Rhode Island. Big thank you to Tach Van Sickel for being a returning guest. We had all sorts of issues. We recorded an episode maybe 4 or 5 months ago, had some difficulties, lost the episode, and then Tach was nice enough to come back and re-record. So thank you, Tach. You know, Tach is actually one of my oldest podcast friends. We met about 5-6 years ago through the Potter and family community, and we were on each other's show a couple times and just got along. So all those years later, when he reached out to me to be a guest on his new podcast, A Very Brady Bunch, when he reached out to me to be on his new podcast, A Very Brady Podcast, I was just so excited to catch up with an old bud. You can go back, check out my episode of that. I was on episode 7. The rewatch, we watched Kitty, the episode called Kitty Carry All is Missing, and I shit all over the Brady Bunch, and Tach was nothing but kind and wonderful to me, so had to get Tach back on here. He's one of my favorite people to talk to. Tach is such an interesting guy, because he's kind of like this new metal-ish kind of guy, and, you know, tough, but then he's like an animator, a podcaster, he's a audio engineer, just also a dad, all that good stuff. Like, just a really fucking cool, tough dude. And I just love talking about him, because where else to get to talk to someone who has a passion for the Brady Bunch, who also worked at SpaceX, and then tells a fun story about going on another podcast to get in a debate with flat earthers, Tach being on the right side of that. And also, like, recording music in the studio with the bassist of Limp Bizkit, and it's fucking nuts. So please check out A Very Brady Podcast. I really like what Tach did. The first season was more guest based, but now it's him and Jimmy Klein, another old friend. Jimmy, if you hear this, shout out, miss you, buddy. And just so much fucking fun. And you don't actually have to like the Brady Bunch to listen to this podcast, because I clearly hate I do not like it. I do not think it's good. But Tach and Jimmy are so fucking fun, and it's, you know, the Brady Bunch, you don't actually have to be a fan, you're just aware of it in the culture enough that they make it so much fun. I cannot recommend checking out the show enough. So you can check everything out there at averybradypodcast.com. We'll put everything in our show notes as well. And I've actually been digging around. I've been getting, like, really hooked on Tach's YouTube channel called Tach Attempts. We'll put everything in the show notes. But it's him. He's got a really fucking good voice. So go Tach. What can't this motherfucker do? Anyway, let's do a quick little housekeeping. I just finished up taking my class with PRX. I finished a 6-week course called with the most amazing people I met. I got to make some new friends and people I'm sure you'll hear on here at some point. And our instructor is Amanda McLaughlin from Multitude. She was an incredible professor. I definitely recommend taking a class through PRX if there's something anyone out there you're interested in. A little more housekeeping. 2 things. Recently, Bree had her birthday. Happy birthday, Bree. And my birthday will be coming up on the 11th. Woo! And Let's Chat is actually turning 7. We're going to be doing a big birthday bash at the end of the month with See You Live. We're going to post all the rest of the details. We'll make that announcement in a few days. So keep your eye on our Twitter feed, and if you're not in our Facebook group for the Let's Chat community, we're going to put all the really good stuff there first. Our Facebook fan page it's great, but Facebook fucking sucks and hides their algorithm, and it kind of makes it useless unless you boost the post. The communities have been really helpful and meeting a lot of really nice people, so we'll post everything in there. We're really, really excited, so, you know, keep your ears open. On August 12th, my guest appearance on the podcast What Did We Miss will be out, where we covered the topic of sunny day real estate, so that was really fun, so keep an ear out for that. And our panel that is now available through the What's Your Writers Club YouTube page, How to Grow and Monetize Your Podcast. You can listen to the feed, you can watch the video, what'syourwritersclub.com. And a huge thank you to Andrew Hall from Laughing in Disbelief for having me on his YouTube show to talk about leveling up and how to grow and monetize your podcast as well. So I'll talk to anyone about that, but Andrew's a good bud. We're going to have to get him back on here as well. I feel like we're rambling. Make sure you just check everything out for us. It's Let's Chat Podcast at Let's Chat Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Keep your eye on the feed and keep your eyes peeled to our social. We got some big stuff coming down the pipe. Let's get to it.
Through my books, down the well, said goodbye to a few, some I didn't tell. Couldn't have seen 21,000 miles, but I got there. Smiles and style, across the royal bound Fusilight. I
home recording is just because of the virus. I think largely it's stepped up. Like it just got so much easier. Like we both been doing podcasts for a long time, and you're one of my earliest podcast friends, and from the back in the Taint Funny days, and but like just the idea, like, do you remember like asking people on your podcast, and then especially trying to get like a name or someone you didn't know, and then there's like a party you'd be like, all right, now I have to hopefully you know how to record a podcast. It's like my theory that some of the early Potter family people that we all like became connected with, part of I think people it became like a skill set. If you could record yourself and not fuck it up, you were like 10 times more likely to go on a podcast.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, they got all these call record. Like I use Call Recorder for Skype, but there's so much better ones out there now, especially now. But like you said,
try that. Oh yeah, no, I mean I've been using all of them, like MP3 Skype Recorder, but I've had everything fail on me at some point. Like I think it's just at this point. I mean, speaking of, like we literally we're re-recording this because of a technical glitch, so maybe it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But actually, that's not as well. It's not a funny story. I felt really bad. I want to put this out there for the listener to know about this. How nice you are of a human being to do this. So we recorded I think it was in March.
Yeah, it was a few months ago.
It was a long time ago, and then a lot of stuff kind of happened, so your episode kept getting pushed back. But with part of the reason my thinking was like I knew it was going to take longer to get released, but we had a kind of a good run, so I was like, all right, the bigger. I wanted to like get the website up and like more so that I could kind of have my show grow a little bit more, so I could help return the favor to an old podcast pal. And then in the premise of all that, between the process of our recording, I had sent it over to my the editor, one of the editors I use, Kevin Ivers, who's a fucking dope ass dude from Talk Dirty to Me. That's I think his podcast. And somewhere in that process, the file got fucked up on like my half of the file, but then I still had a backup file in my head because I usually put everything on my Google Drive, but for a reason I never did. It was on my old phone. But in that time from we've talked, and this is going to sound one of those moments where like truth is stranger than fiction. I used to have a Google Pixel 2 XL up until about a month ago. The power button came off like during the virus,
Wow.
And then the battery died, so I couldn't turn it on and I couldn't reset the phone. And the only way I had to go to a Verizon store, but it was like the peak virus when you're trying to avoid people. So I ended up getting a new iPhone and losing that phone. I lost everything on that phone, which happened to have.
Oh,
So besides, I had your file, then everything went wrong. So it was just kind of funny, but
yeah, no worries. That happens to us, man. It happened.
Yeah.
It happened to me actually recently, probably about a couple months ago. I recorded a podcast with two other guests, and they each recorded their end of the show, right? And they sent me their files just like they're supposed to. It was great, perfect files. But who had the bad file? Me. Because apparently you're not supposed to use the same SD card for the past, 7 years. So
I don't know this stuff.
Well, I knew it, but I just kept taking a chance.
Yeah.
As soon as that happened, I had a corrupt file. I just threw the SD card away. And I was like, all right, that card's done.
Yeah, I've had people not send me their files. I've had the whole thing say it's recording and not recording. I think I estimated once. I think there's about 20 episodes of this show that's missing. Some for various reasons. Some are like a couple of them. One experience was a person asked for it not to be released because they didn't like what they said, and that was fine. Sometimes I've lost episodes, and then the people like you are nice enough to come back and do it. Some of them are just gone for the sands of time that will never. And some of those were fun. Some of those were could have been big guests too, which was I am so sorry because you were giving me an hour of half of your time and I fucked it up. But what are you gonna do? But
it happens, man. It's part of the game.
I think what the nice thing now is everyone's on board with it. We're all using when all this happened. At my job, it was the first time we became a little more using this kind of stuff. In my work, we never used this stuff because of HIPAA. And now we're doing teleconference and all this stuff. So everyone, it's just no. I'm oh guys, I've been talking on Skype to strangers for an hour for years. This is easy. And watching everyone learn it together. And I don't know what it is. Seems to be a baby boomer, a boomer thing. But when something goes wrong, it's not it's just all right, whatever. It's the world is ending. Oh my god, the Skype! Oh my god, the Zoom! The whole thing is I mean, it's you're counseling people as if the world is ending every time there's a technical snag. I was so it's so funny.
That is.
Well, speaking of boomers, that kind of backwards is us into what I wanted. The thing we're here to talk about today. So
Okay.
we've known each other for a long time. With from back in the day, we were early guests on each other. So you were on this podcast in the early years, and I was on Take Funny with all you great guys. And then through the years, it's been such great to see how all these different people and come and go and change and get to reconnect. But now you've got this great new podcast called A Very Brady Podcast, which you were so nice enough to have me on to come over and just shit all over the Brady Bunch.
But in a good way. It's in a good way. It's in a loving way.
I've listened to more of your episodes. Like I'm understanding the charm of the Brady Bunch of that. Like, because when we recorded the first time when you were on this podcast, and even when we did your Brady Bunch podcast, it was before the virus had hit. So like maybe my need for nostalgia wasn't as needed, but like now like watching older stuff, where like I watch a lot of rewatching Scrubs, like stuff from 20 years ago. There's something nice about it when you're just like, I don't have to think.
Have you been listening to the Scrubs podcast?
Yes, that's actually what did it. My dear friend Alicia Riley turned me on to that podcast because at first I didn't like it, and then because they don't actually talk about Scrubs ever at first because they're But because I also like Office Ladies, I'm actually a huge fan of all these like rewatch TV show podcasts.
Oh, for sure. I love Office Ladies. I listen to that every single week. Yeah.
Yeah, that same here. That's like my commute to work every Thursday. Is it Thursdays it comes out? I think.
I don't know, but I always have the same days I listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the few shows. There's a Community one I really like.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
The Darkest Timeline with Ken Jeong and Joel McHale.
Oh, wow.
You know what's really cool about them? They like right when Community came to Netflix, a bunch of like community rewatch podcasts like popped up on Twitter, or maybe they had been there, but I started following a bunch of them. And there's like this real community around like Community fans, and I'm a huge Community fanatic. And Joel McHale and Ken Jeong did like a Zoom call, and they had all of these like indie podcast hosts like you and me with all the people who host like Community fan podcast. Like, I love seeing the people who make the thing also being in on, like, we love this as much as you. And I just thought that, like, it's, like, the sweetest fucking thing. So I'm hoping the Brady Bunch will do that for you.
I know. I'm working on getting some of the cast on, but we'll see.
You will.
Fingers crossed.
I think you can.
Yeah.
So why did you start a Brady Bunch rewatch podcast in 2020?
Well, technically I started in 2019. So
I
started I started last October. So,
oh my god!
What it was, the way the story goes is, the show was going to be about. I think we talked about this last time on the Lost episode, but I'll bring it all up again. The show was actually going to be about the Andy Griffith Show. So I was actually going to do an Andy Griffith rewatch show because I love the Andy Griffith Show, and I really didn't even start watching that until I was like, probably within the past 5 years when I first started watching the Andy Griffith Show, and that show was really funny. And I was like, this is so cool. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do a rewatch podcast all about the Andy Griffith Show. And then, who knows if the show gets big enough, I can have somebody on that was on the show. But then I realized everybody's dead. There's nobody alive except maybe Ron Howard. And there's no way he's doing my little podcast. So maybe. And I was like, well, shit.
I think he will.
I was like, yeah, so like I was thinking, I had everything set up. I set up all my social media. It was going to be called Welcome to Mayberry. Like, I had all the stuff ready to go. And it was literally the night before I was going to record my first episode. I had my buddy Ron, who was going to be my first guest. And he was all ready to go. And so literally the night before, I was like, I got to think about something else. And so then I immediately thought, the Brady Bunch, that's nostalgic. Tons of people know about the show. There's, most of the cast is still alive. Like, this is great. And plus, there was the HGTV thing that was getting ready to hit too, and I was like, this is going to rebirth the show altogether. And I was like, it's a great time for this. There's a lot of funny things that can be said about the show. And so I texted my buddy. I was like, I'm changing the show to the Brady Bunch. And he was like, holy shit. He's like, I fucking hate the Brady Bunch. Really? And I was like, yep, and you're going to still be my first guest tomorrow. And he was like, all right, fine.
What a good friend.
I know, but I'm having a blast. So I just do. The first season is different than season 2. So the first season was just me, and I had a new guest every week, and including you. You did an episode for me.
I was not kind.
Do what?
I was not kind to the show.
No, you were not kind.
Which is
great. Yeah, I welcome all walks of life. So some people, I've had guests that have never seen the show, I've had guests that hate the show. I have guests that love the show. So it's great. I welcome everybody and everybody's opinion.
Yeah, I definitely have to say, as like an audience member of your show, because I've come to really like it, is you are such a good host of it because you don't you are somehow able to be like a fan of the show, but simultaneously understand that people hate this, which
Yeah.
which you don't really see in fandom frequently. Like that's like the biggest example being Star Wars, where like people have to nitpick and argue, but you're just like, I like this thing, and if you don't, that's okay, and if you do, that's also okay. But I think as a listener, it's kind of fun because it's not like imagine like every episode you have to have like a fucking fist fight with someone over the Brady Bunch because that it doesn't elicit that much of a response from most people. So, but which I think makes you so much great because like you were so kind and fun to me. But I listened to other episodes you've had with different people who've like written the I'm sorry, I want to say it was a book, but I'm trying to remember it was an article. You had a really good writer on that. I remember we talked about her last time. I spaced on her name, but
Oh, yeah.
we had some amazing guests.
Yeah, I had God, now I'm gonna look like an idiot. I forgot her first name, but her last name was Potts. Yeah, she wrote The Way We All Became the Brady Bunch, which is a fantastic book. And I had her on as a guest, and she was really great. She was awesome. And now, since season 2, I've added a co-host to the show, my friend Jimmy, which you know Jimmy.
That made me so happy, and also
Yeah.
what a great thing. And this is some of the best unsolicited advice that you can get as like someone who has a podcast is like not be too, which I think you did really well. Is like when you're starting out or at any point not to be too strict with your format because like I know you have to have a format like when you make your show, but like it seems like what you did is kind of same what happened to me, and I think to most people. This goes, I think, for podcasts or anything. Like, you kind of let the show find itself. Like, you set off your idea, and then you do and then you figure out what's practical, what people actually like, what you like, and then you switched up. Because I think your show's gotten much. Well, I also, I love Jimmy, so it was like, yes. So I think that was so cool that you did that.
Yeah, it's a lot better. It flows a lot better. It's easier. Now I don't have to worry about looking for a guest every single week. I'm panicking at the last minute. Plus, it also frees me up a lot because before with a guest, I had to write out the synopsis every single episode. I mean, I wrote down scene by scene everything that happens. It would take me sometimes 2 hours just to get through an episode. But now I split that duties now with Jimmy, so he does one day, I do the next week, he does 1 week, and it's great. And we're still gonna have guests eventually, but right now we're still trying to get our format right. We were actually just talking just before we started recording this. Jimmy and I were like, hey, what do you think about maybe doing the format like this? And I was like, oh, we'll try it. So we'll try it out tonight because we're recording tonight. And it's just been so much fun. And the show is slow growing, but it's getting there. It's definitely, I've doubled my audience within the past couple of months since you and I have talked last. But
fuck yeah, that's awesome.
It's still not great yet, but it's still not bad. So it's getting there. It's getting there.
It makes me feel better. According to all the I've been doing master class. I'm taking a class, and I'm also been doing these master class, which has been really, really fucking.
Are you talking about the ones you always see advertised by celebrities and stuff? And
No. There's not one of those. Thankfully, I'm taking. There's two separate ones. There's a master class through there's a radio station in Rhode Island called WBRU. That was mostly online. And actually, what happened with them was they had a podcast conference. It's part of Brown. They had a whole conference about podcasting coming up here in Providence. And then, the virus hit, so they couldn't do it. So they moved it all online. So actually, these are available for anyone in the country. I don't know when they're doing any again, but I went to a few of them. I got to do, and they're all on Zoom calls. But I got to. It was. I learned a ton. And one of them was we got to a group of us got to get on a call with some producers from Stitcher, and they kind of gave you a break. Everyone's a little theme, and then on top of that, I'm taking a class through the PRX podcast garage in Boston, but it's online because of the virus. The one I'm taking is called it's finding. It's about basically Mark. I'm trying to remember the name. I'm confusing it with something else. I'm moderating a panel coming up, and I'm confusing it because it's a similar title. I want to say the class I'm taking is about about marketing and growing your audience essentially. But other than that, the whole point for all this, from what I've heard, so I've gotten for the first time in my life, actually getting to talk to people more in the industry outside of just us. And the virus hit podcasting as a whole just dropped 20%, downloads across the board.
I think things are coming back, but advertisers were really scared. So the fact that you actually grew your audience is like, whoa. Because there was a period that the podcast downloads dropped, and then I think there was 800,000 new podcasts started in like a week, and they're almost all of them were about the coronavirus. So like people, the industry trends were thinking like, all right, this is what podcasting is now. Everything's about the virus. But then I also read more recently that now the podcast trends are less about the virus. A lot of the ones that started didn't take. A lot of we call it pod fade. And then a lot of now are becoming more popular ones about more cultural issues. So to me, it's interesting to see how podcasting is moving in like those waves and numbers. But it seems to be like the stuff like you're doing and consistency is really the key. Because like 800,000 started, maybe about that, say 400,000 stick around. And then every day you and I keep going. We're just like the man on the mountain who just didn't leave for some reason.
Yeah, it's a slow climb, but we'll get there. I know that's one thing we talked about is we don't talk political at all. So as far as the coronavirus or COVID-19, we've never mentioned it on the show, and we're not going to mention it either.
Which I love that, because I think it's so nice to have a place of your life where you could just not think about it.
Mm-hmm. Plus, we want evergreen content too, so and that kind of negates that.
Of course, especially because it's it might timestamp it, and especially that you're doing a show about the Brady Bunch. I don't even feel like there's any criticism of you avoiding that topic, because like I don't even know how it fits in. Because what would you do? Watch the Brady Bunch? Hey, what would it be like if there were cell phones? Like that's not fun. Like that's not what you're doing. You're watching it as it is, which I think is fun. But
right.
But how did you decide to get Jimmy to come back to jump on with you?
Well, he had done like a few episodes as a guest, and I had noticed like a trend. Like for some reason, every time he was on, I had more downloads when he was on, and plus it was just fun to have him on the show. And so we had talked about like, what do you think about coming on here full time? And he was like, that'd be awesome. And so I was like, all right, well, let me finish up season 1, and we'll put you on full time starting season 2. And then he did like more and more episodes as a guest on season 1, just kind of let the audience get used to hearing Jimmy, and it just flows much better now. So it's easier to talk with your buddy versus a different person. Sometimes a person I'd never met before, and then I've had like one flop guest that just did not work out well, and I get like bad reviews on that episode all the time or comments on it, and but overall it's been good. But with Jimmy, it's just been awesome because we just flow really well together.
How do you guys know each other? Is he still in Florida?
Yeah, which I'm heading back there too.
Oh,
I had to
good.
move up here last summer. I'm working my way. I'm just trying to find work down there so I can go back.
Oh, good for you. Because how did you guys know each other? Because you were doing funny back then.
Yeah,
when I first met
Jimmy
you.
and I. Yeah, Jimmy and I met back in middle school. We were I was 12, he was 13. So we've known each other since the 80s.
And just been friends. And
yeah,
that's good because there was that trend in podcasting, which I think and there's still a market for it, it still exists, but like two guys, it would be like two friends talking about random shit. And people love that stuff, and that's fine. It's just not the ones I like, but I like two friends talking about something they love, and in this instance, it's the Brady Bunch,
yeah.
Which still makes me laugh. I'm sure I know I brought up on your episode that with you as well, but man, can we take a minute to talk about the Brady Bunch movies and how underrated they are as comedies?
Right.
Those movies like make the series to me worthwhile because it's like, oh, I think they just nail in on the weirdness of it, and they somehow make fun of it and celebrate. Basically what you do. Like you can make fun of it and also celebrate it.
Yeah, definitely. And we've talked about doing episodes just on those movies as well too. So
please do.
We have a lot of content.
If you ever need a guest and you can't find something that's worth note, please let me know. I will come and talk about those movies anytime.
Oh, for sure.
I'll have to send this to you afterwards. There's this there's a platform called CYA Live, like CYA Live. I am going to be doing some hosting stuff with them, but they're looking for people to do content. But if you ever wanted to do like a Very Brady podcast, like watch along of that movie, like I'll talk to you about this afterwards. I'll send it to you.
Okay. Cool.
It'd be something I can introduce you to Mark and set up a demo, and they would fucking love you because they're dying for content. I went to a couple of their events because they had one. They were showing Galaxy Quest with Griffin Newman and Paul Scheer, and it was me, and then there's a chat room of like a couple hundred people, and then Griffin and Newman, and who I'm a huge fan of both of those people, and Paul Scheer had like little screens that would like kind of talk through it. And then there's ways like people would, and then they would like have pauses and people can jump in and interact. It was actually really fucking fun. It's like what the future of I think cinema can be. But anyway, I think that could be so fun. Do like a movie because those movies are just like, fuck, are they good? Gary Cole is a genius.
Yeah.
Do you watch West Wing? Did you watch West Wing or Veep or any of that stuff?
No, I'm not big on politics or political shows, but I'm aware that they've done very well. I know that.
He's in Office Space. That's what I'm thinking of.
What is it?
He was in Office Space.
Oh, who was he in Office Space?
He's the boss.
Oh, Lumberg?
Yeah, he's not Lumberg.
Who also played... Oh, well, the guy Lumberg played the dad also on the Brady Bunch movies as well.
Yeah, that's his name is Gary Cole. Great actor.
That's right. You're right. Yeah.
Fantastic. One of the... And I think his casting as Brady is so perfect in that movie. I could spend like 2 hours talking about those movies because I still remember seeing that. So like my introduction to the Brady Bunch was actually the movies first. Well, I was watching my grandparents' house, but then I saw the movies first, and those were like, oh, like I don't think I understood the level of comedy that they were hitting off.
Yeah, especially since they were taking pieces of episodes for the movie. It's like most of it's from episodes, which is great.
No, I don't know if this is going to get you in trouble with your audience, if this will qualify for cancel culture, but would you say that Saved by the Bell is the modern day of our generation's Brady Bunch?
I would say 100%.
All right, well, this was not a hot take at all. I tried.
Definitely.
Like when we were doing the Brady Bunch rewatch, preparing for your episode, I was watching that episode, but then it made me think about other Brady Bunch episodes, and like I've listened to some of your episodes, and it made me think of that episode of the series of Saved by the Bell where they do the summer vacation with the Carossis with Leia Remini, and like I mean it's like straight from the Brady Bunch they like steal that plot. Like isn't there this like a ancient curse from Hawaiian something and Screech really? Like that's straight from the Brady Bunch movies, which I think they took from the TV show.
Yeah, it's just like the Brady Bunch had like the show, right? And then they also did their movies as well, just like Saved by the Bell did their like Married in Hawaii or they did like their movies and stuff too, and same kind of thing. So definitely Saved by the Bell is like our generations of Brady Bunch.
Yeah, sure. Like I guess I understand that you kind of culturally grow up and you love something that isn't good. You know, like I have a lot of that stuff. I have a lot of that stuff. Like if I watched it now for the first time, I don't think I would ever like Saved by the Bell because I saw it at such a young age so many times. I truly watch it like with joy and happiness, even though I know it's terrible.
Exactly. It was terrible, and which is where I got my idea from the show from. You know, Go Bayside with April Richardson.
Oh, I love Go Bayside.
Right? I know. Well, you and I have talked about it before, but that's where I kind of stole her format, and I was like, you know, that's what I'm going to do. So.
A little disappointed you didn't go for your Third Rock from the Sun rewatch that we were going to do.
Oh, I know. That's also a fantastic show.
I know.
Oh, that's so good.
I don't know about you. I have this problem where there's just not enough time because if I had $1 billion, my every day would just be like, I'm going to start this podcast, and then I'm going to start this podcast, and I'm going to start this podcast, and I'm going to start this podcast, and then I'm like, but I also have to keep having the podcast that I started originally that is actually doing something, like having some sort of like worthwhile investment of time and hopefully some money. So it's so tough. But yeah, I think of all the TV shows, I've always honestly dreamed of doing wanted to do a TV rewatch podcast, but it's a hard pitch for me to tell someone like I'd like to host it but do nothing else, and I can see why no one else wants to do that. Like yeah, I'll show up and talk, and then you have to watch the episode, I'll prepare, but then outside of that you have to do all the editing and marketing and all the bullshit that goes into it.
It's kind of what I do now with the Very Brady Podcast.
Yeah, that's how
Jimmy luckily just has to show up and be the honor of talent. And he does synopsis too every other time. But
yeah.
He does do so.
I'm actually just getting into that point where I have a team, so I'm having more people do more of the bullshit so I can do the other stuff, but it's hard to give over control.
It is difficult. I mean, it's easier, like, I'll just take care of it. It's easier if I just do it.
I'm not like a control freak anywhere else in my life or like that person, but it's just like, I've been doing it this way for so long. It's just been me forever. So it's hard, but it's been a wonderful experience. And the flip side to it has been that things have grown exponentially because when it's not just you, you can get stuff done that wasn't ever getting done before because you ain't doing it.
Yeah.
So, like, in terms of, like, for your podcast too, like, I'm sure, like you know, you and I have this in common. We're both dads, and we both have, like, jobs, and, like, we're just, you know, this isn't our career, unfortunately. I'm sure you probably would love it to be just like this guy, like
For
me.
sure. Yeah.
One of the cool things my instructor says in my class is, like, podcasting is a unique industry because nobody really comes to it. Everyone kind of falls backwards into it in different ways. What was your introduction to podcasting?
I think it was a buddy of mine, Ron, years ago, because I always knew what podcasts were, but I didn't really listen to them much and really know. I was interested in listening, I just never did. And then a buddy of mine was like, I've been really thinking about doing a podcast. And I'm like, okay, like, how do you go about that? And, and really, the quick version is when you take Taint Funny, for example, right? So it was 4 of us on that show. It was me, Jimmy, our friend Eric, and our friend John. So the 4 of us we've all been friends since at least the late 90s, right? And so the 4 of us always had, to me anyway, the most hilarious conversations. And it would be a lot of, like, group texting stuff where the 4 of us would just rag on each other or just talk about funny shit or just talk about whatever's in pop culture now. And I was like, this right here is a podcast. Like, this needs to be a podcast. And so everybody's like, okay, well, you set it up and we'll do it. And so I was like, great. And so I did. And it was hilarious and we loved doing it. And it was very therapeutic for sure. To get together with your boys like once a week and just bullshit and just talk. And it was fun. That's why I loved doing it. And I wanted more. So then I started doing a couple other shows with a couple other people. And then, now I do just this one now, but I'm always up for, like, another show, even though I have no time for it. But I still want to do another one, yeah. Oh,
my God. I absolutely... well, I think that's true. I thought, that's what made me think of for Taint Funny. I have this unique experience. I remember I was a guest on Taint Funny. It was either the first or it was one of the very first podcasts I was ever on. But I remember being at my job, same job, but I actually remember who it was. She's now a supervisor, but we're my friend. I remember someone that I worked with came up to me, I'll say my friend Jody, and she, like, started commenting about how she listened to my podcast, and I'm like, huh? And she was a little confused, but she had, for whatever reason, she saw on Facebook, she had listened to my episode of Taint Funny, and that was the moment I was like, I'm getting fired. This is it. And she thought it was hilarious. Thank God. I don't know what we said. This was so many years ago, but that first feeling where someone who has some sort of leverage over you can, like, heard you on a podcast. You're like, what did I say?
Right.
Have you had any terrible experiences with saying something about someone or vice versa or someone else yet? I've had a couple things happen.
Well, yes and no, some potentially ones. So I used to work out at SpaceX for like 5 years, down in Cape Canaveral in Florida. And so I was a friend of mine who used to work at NASA at the time, Adam. We were guests on this other podcast called Hysteria 51, and they did a flat Earth roundtable, and with these 2 flat Earthers. And so it was also like 2 other guests that were also on there. One was like an astrophysicist, another one was, so we were kind of representing the global Earth, against these 2 flat Earthers, and it was like a big roundtable debate kind of a thing. And then these guys were, they were saying, like, I had to make very clear, I am not representing SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
I just happen to work it. And so they were like, well, SpaceX, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, once again, I do not represent SpaceX. I just happen to work there. I'm still me. All my opinions are my own. I had to say this disclaimer like so many times because I was afraid somebody was going to hear it. And next thing, you know what I mean? So, but that was a...
Man, you couldn't even find a more niche way to get yourself into some sort of... Thankfully you didn't, but, like, it wasn't that you went on a podcast and said something. You're like, I'm going to go on a podcast as I am an employee of SpaceX and talk to flat earthers who are... I'm just going to hope that you're not on their side.
Definitely not.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I still want to be your friend, and I was trying to figure out what to avoid because I didn't want this to go that way. To be like,
There's no way you could be a flat earther and work at SpaceX at the same time because the guy was like arguing and saying like, oh well, all those like rocket landings, those are all fake. I'm like, how like.
I know.
And he was like, well, you're either a part of the cover up and lie, or they're lying to you. And I'm like, how when I can visually watch it happen? Oh, and he was saying there's like a big screen and and it's all projected. I was like, come on, dude.
The problem with like that type of thinking of those types of people you argue with is that they need zero substantial proof for their claims and demand the world from you. And I don't have that kind of energy anymore. It's like arguing with a libertarian. Exactly. Even if I just don't have the energy. I just don't. Like, you're like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't understand the flat earth thing. Well, I had someone explain it to me. Let me reframe that. I had someone explain to me why it's a thing, not why people believe it and what they get from it and stuff. Yeah. But I didn't realize there's like a lot of weird like religiosity to it as well. But fuck, I don't want to talk about flat earthers. I'm having a good day. But that's so funny that you went on a podcast with those, but while working with NASA and SpaceX, like the two, like you're like literally the enemy. But I also love those moments because those people always think you're more important than you are. Be like, do you know where I am at the totem pole at my job? Like I'm
exactly.
I'm not running the place by any means.
Yeah.
I think I'm well liked and respected, but in terms of like, I hope, but like in terms of high up the ladder, that ain't me. It doesn't go Elon Musk, Tach.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, at least you didn't smoke a blunt incorrectly on the Joe Rogan Experience to tank your stock.
Right. Oh well.
Did you ever I know it's so weird to say this because I worked at Starbucks for like years. I never met Howard Schultz. But did you happen to ever come in contact with Mr. Musk?
For sure. Well, I never like physically got to like shake his hand and say hi, but I've been like at after launch parties where he was at. I've held a door for him before, and I said, "Good morning, sir." As he's like walking through it. Stuff like that. Because I was in security, so I had to deal with a lot of that kind of stuff. So,
is it weird to be around someone of that level? Well, he wasn't what he is now, because he had an interesting rise of like, internet darling, and then fucking not doing so hot.
I haven't been following him lately in the news, but I hear he's been in the news lately. So I'm still kind of bitter about being laid off from SpaceX. So
he doesn't. He kind of got like beloved by a certain type of people, and then I think he got red pilled pretty bad. And I don't know. But also money and fame and success, like that's gotta fuck up your worldview, especially when like the whole world like tells you you're a genius and you start to believe. I don't know. I'm not defending him. I don't really like him. I don't really follow him very much. I think the last thing I saw from last night was like Kanye West announced he was running for president and he like was gonna back him. Or something.
I heard something like that.
I do have these moments where I watch that and like there's got to be a part of him who's just like, I know how to play the media machine. Like,
yeah.
Like, exactly. Of course I'm gonna do this tweet because it's gonna get me everything. But I don't know if it's that well planned. But screw that. But back to the flat earthers. Did you guys kick their ass?
It's really hard too because they have answers at the ready because they already know what we're gonna argue, right? So they have they're very good.
They're never even good responses either. It's like, oh, here's something that completely is wrong. Oh, it's fake. But I can't say that to you.
Right. Like, and there was a time in it where, so I was like, well, here, I welcome you to come down, watch a SpaceX launch, view it for yourself, and then tell me like that it's a lie. And then somebody asked the flat earthers, like, look, if you were to do that, if you were to come down to Florida, watch it, see it happen, watch the first stage come back and land on the landing pad, would you believe it then? And the guy said no. And then we're like, well, then why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah. More importantly, I want to go to a SpaceX launch. How come us non-flat earthers don't get those invites? Wait, so you've been to those launches?
Huh?
You've gotten to go to the launches?
Well, of course, I worked there for 5 years. I'm there, like
What's it
I'm
like?
part of the launches. I'm part of all that. Like
That's
I used
true.
to
Yeah,
like when that first stage came back down and landed. I was on that red team that was part of that team that went straight out there as soon as they landed.
dude.
So
Oh my god. Good thing we're doing this for a second time. I can't believe I missed this the first time we talked. 'Cause, like that's such a cultural thing. Like to be part of this. I have. Well, I've had. So my job is very different. Like because of HIP, I work in behavioral health. So everything like HIPAA. So I can never. So there's like the privacy and stuff. So I've had a few instances where I've been involved in like a cultural moment or something that's in the news, but usually because like an individual I work with. So by law, I can't speak about it. So I've never been able to like be a part of something and then actually talk about it with anyone. So what's it fucking like? Like, dude, a rocket launch? That's insane.
well, I grew up around Central Florida, so I've been watching shuttle launches and all that kind of shit my whole life, pretty much since I was like 12 years old.
Do we
So
get
I'm used to
right
that.
now for bringing up Florida and for us not shitting on it? Like we're actually talking about Florida in a really beautiful, positive way. Do I get any to like your tourism board? Like, I need some money from this. I'm not even
I mean,
anti-Florida. I'm just really proud of us.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I talk about Florida positively all the time, except for right now where there's a spike in some sort of sickness we're not going to go into down there right now.
That's a
But
good thing. No old people live down there, so you're fine.
it'll open up the population more. Oh, that's terrible.
What if like the silver lining is unfortunately we lose a lot of the Florida population, God forbid. But that opens up more land for bigger Disney World.
It all boils down back to Disney.
Yeah, see, we're flat earthers now. You make up a conspiracy with no claim and then defend it. But yeah, I want to hear more about the space stuff and growing up in Florida around like NASA and stuff. That's so fucking cool.
Oh yeah, like so once Obama like got rid of the shuttle program, that's when SpaceX came in, and SpaceX uses the same launch pads that were the shuttle used, and the same launch pads that some of the Apollo missions used, and so there's tons and tons of like space history down there, and it's Cape Canaveral Air Force Station down there, and at Kennedy Space Center. It's so cool. There's so much history there. There's so much hidden history just on that base alone. Like I remember, because I've learned so much about the hidden history around the base. Like I'll be driving around the base with somebody and I go, "Hey, you see that hangar right there?" People go, "Yeah." Did you know that Kennedy did a speech right there in that parking lot?
Wow.
We're like, no fucking way. Like, yeah, but it just looks like a hangar that nobody fucking uses anymore. It's not abandoned, but just nobody uses it right now. It's not assigned. And there's just so much history. Or that launch pad over there, that's where Apollo 1 fire happened. And, they were killed on the launch pad. If you remember that story about the Apollo 1 mission.
Was that the teacher that blew the one that exploded?
Yeah, like had a fire right there on the launch pad and killed all three astronauts inside.
What was the famous one? I think. No, I don't know if the time frame, if I'm remembering correctly, if I saw it when it happened or I remember. I have seen it, but there's
Challenger.
The Challenger with the teacher that went to space and then exploded.
Yeah. That came off the 39A, Launchpad 39A or 39B. I can't remember which one, but yeah, right there. SpaceX 39A.
Like tours, like people, like the public could take of this stuff?
For sure, yeah. If you go down to
the city to do this.
Yeah, they have what's called right there. Used to be literally like a mile from my house when I lived down there. Is what's called the visitor complex, and so Kennedy Space Center, like visitor complex or something like that. And right there, you can get on tours that'll take you on a bus all the way around the base and show you launch pads. You'll see SpaceX Launchpad 39A, along with tons of other little things around the base. There's a lot of space history, including like the Saturn V museum that's also in the base, which is really cool. Shows the old Saturn V rockets that Apollo's used, and such big rockets. Oh my God, they're ridiculously big. And there's just so much history there, and it's amazing. And it's a little pricey to go on these bus tours, but they're so cool, though. It's definitely worth it if you're into that kind of stuff.
Well, especially like if you're like me, like if you travel to Florida, like it's like if I'm gonna get on an airplane or drive a car to get to Central Florida, I'm not gonna be like, oh, the bus ticket's too much. But I'm not like I can say this. There's someone I know. I won't get into the who, but there's a story of someone that a family friend where they went to, I believe, is it Paris, and they got to the Louvre, and the tickets were too expensive, so they didn't go in.
What? You
And
have
we're
to go
talking
there.
about getting on an airplane from the United States, flying to
Right.
France, doing all of that stuff, and be like, too many euros. So
my
I think that's
God,
more of a
you can't go that
personality
far.
thing, if anything.
I guess so. Must not be that important. But
Whatever. You can see that. You can see a picture of that or anywhere.
yeah,
But
I'll catch that on the internet when I go
so
home.
when you growing up in Central Florida, like, is just like there a lot of like, is it just normal for your friends' dads to be astronauts or work for NASA, and it's just like, it's just the
Well,
industry, like the way Hartford had insurance, like where I grew up, near.
not astronauts. That's pretty rare. The whole time living out there and even working at a space center, I've only met like maybe 2 astronauts tops. Not even really met. It was like, hey, how are you? And that's it.
Is there
Um,
not many? Are there not many astronauts?
well, not right now. I mean, not anymore. Now, SpaceX has like 2 or 4 astronauts now. We just sent the SpaceX just sent up the first manned flight like a couple months ago or a month or so ago.
Yeah, I watched that. Cool.
Yeah, that was amazing. That's where SpaceX stock just shot back up as soon as that thing went up successfully. And but working out at like the Space Center, there's a lot of like Space Center stuff. There's a lot of like military also in the area. So, a family member being in the military or working out at the Space Center or something like that is kind of common.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other business out there too. So I would say maybe it's probably 27%. It's not as much as you would think, but because there's so much more out there as well. Like the whole county is huge. It's a very long and skinny county because it's right on the edge, east coast side of Florida. It almost runs up a lot of the east coast. I can't remember. It might be like 30, 40 miles long, but like really thin. So there's so much business in there. Some of it is Space Center and military, a lot of it.
Yeah. Now, I know you're from Florida, but now you're up in Virginia. Do you like I know my wife and my good friend Janae Lee, like they're from New Jersey, and anytime that they're not in New Jersey and they have to mention where they're from, they just have to kind of get the guard up and get ready to do like a little 1-2 punch or like what exit or like whatever. And sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it's shitty. Do you have to have that experience because you're from Florida, living in Virginia right now, being like, I'm from Florida, and then like, all right, let's go. Like, you're about to shit on my hometown. I don't care how you feel about it, like, or you just like whatever. Like I guess
I
what
don't
is
really
the
hear too
perception
much.
of the perception of Florida as like an internet? It's like a meme. It's like a joke. Like Florida's like a joke. Like only in Florida, but you're actually from there. Like how does that affect you?
Well, that's okay. So you hear a lot about the Florida man. You hear those stories all the time, right? So everybody has. The only reason why you hear those stories so much because the Sunshine Law, which means like the Florida state is allowed to share those stories where every state has a Florida man, every state has a New York man or a Utah man. They're just their state laws with sharing those kind of stories and information about about arrests and stupid shit people do. It's not as loose as it is in Florida. That's why it's called the Sunshine Law. So that's why
I've
you
never
hear
heard of that
so
law.
much more about the Florida man than you do anywhere else.
What is the Sunshine Law? I never heard of this.
I'm actually going to pull it up because I don't remember exactly what it is. But hold on, give me 2 seconds.
I just want everyone to know it's like 11:30 in the morning, and Tach is being so kind with his time to do his podcast again. And now we're like, I need you to be an expert on Brady Bunch, NASA, SpaceX, and now I need you to give me the state law origins of the Sunshine Law, because that's the kind of guy Tach is, and this is why he's the best kind of podcast guest and host, because somehow you're now about to learn. I actually have never heard of that, because I've always wondered, like, why is Florida always... I always thought it was just the shape of Florida, or crazy things happen in Florida. Like, you hear those stories, but like I said, I've worked in community mental health and behavioral health, and like, for years, so I can tell you a bunch of those stories I've experienced. Well, I'm not allowed to, but I've had all of those experiences. I read about Florida men, minus the alligators, I've had in Rhode Island or Massachusetts, but I'm not publicized.
I'm sure.
Less
So it
alligators.
says the Sunshine Law says Florida's government in the Sunshine Law provides a right to access to governmental proceedings at both the state and local levels. It applies to any gathering of 2 or more members of the same board to discuss same matter, which will foreseeably come before that board for action. That made no sense to me, but it says regulations requiring transparency and disclosure in government or business. Sunshine laws make meetings, records, votes. I don't know. I don't know if that made sense to you at all. But
No, I never knew that, but that's interesting. So part of it, I guess that's kind of cool to know why that exists. Like, Florida's just, by law, they're allowed to talk about this shit more publicly than other states, I guess, and because of that. Then it's Florida. Well, then you got Florida's a unique state in the sense, like, in the States, like, you're not bordering, the majority of your state, rather, isn't, like, bordering anything. I mean, Rhode Island is the same thing in that sense, but Rhode Island is this big, which is, like, and Florida's huge, so maybe that's part of the reason, but, like, I mean, most of our state, we're bordered by 2 states, because Florida, you're only bordering 2 states at the northern part.
Well, we got Georgia, obviously, and it was
Alabama?
Yeah. Alabama.
But, like, yeah, northern Florida and southern Florida are almost like 2 different. I've never been to either, or been to one, but, like,
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's so weird for me. I grew up in New England. Like, I grew up in Connecticut. I live in Rhode Island. Like, I can't imagine being in a place where you can travel 12 hours and still be in the same state. If I literally got in a car right now and I go 12 hours north, I'll be in Canada, pretty far into Canada. And if I go south, I'll be in like one of the Carolinas, I think, probably.
Maybe. I don't know. Is it really 12 hours? Like, say, from Miami to Jacksonville? Is that really 12? I think it's 12. I think it's probably more like 9, maybe 10.
I don't know how I made up that number, but it sounds right.
But yeah. But it's still it's a very long state, yeah.
I remember, it's so weird that you said, I had like a flashback. I remember when I was younger, I had booked a show with this production company that like crumbled. But one of the bands we had on there was called Glass Eater, and they were with Bayside. And I remember talking to them, and they were from Miami, and they said it was 12 hours from like Miami for them to get to Georgia. It was 12 hours. Like I remember them talking about like touring and getting home, coming from like the north, and be like, how shitty it must feel. Like how shitty it was to hit Florida and be like, all right, 12 hours till we're home. Or like when I hit Connecticut, dude, I'm not kidding. When I come into Rhode Island from this farthest point, I'm like, all right, I'll be home in 30 to 40 minutes. But like, I can't even imagine hitting like North Florida and being like, all right, 12 more hours of this shit.
Try driving through Texas. I don't know if you've ever done that.
No, I never. Have you?
Yeah, a couple times, man.
How long?
You spend like a day and a half just going through Texas, because I've taken like I-10 from like Florida all the way across to California. And man, Texas just takes up so much. It's like half the trip is just getting through Texas. It's like, oh my God.
And the thing too, like when you travel, like it's not like it's like I only drove cross country one time, but I went from Vermont to San Francisco. But so this is I-80. There's just nothing. You're not seeing the best and the brightest or what these states have to offer most of the time. I mean, I got to go to Cleveland, which is really cool. Like, there's no like there's just nothing. You're just driving through desert.
Oh yeah, for sure. Same with I-10. Once you hit like Arizona, New Mexico, it's just nothing for miles, and it's just desert for as far as you can. You can't even pick up radio stations. You roll through the radio, it's just nothing but static, and it's like you're like,
or like really scary conservative talk radio.
Yeah,
like the Jesus Camp esque kind of stuff is where it all kind of starts there. But yeah, that's nuts, man. That's so nuts. Did you think that you would be one of the only people on Earth who would be qualified to talk about SpaceX and the Brady Bunch as the authority?
Maybe.
Tach Musk.
Once again, I don't represent the Brady Bunch or SpaceX.
Tach Brady Musk. Is that not your name?
Yeah. Hey, also, another thing I want to talk about too, real quickly, if you got some time here. Yeah. Well, 2 things really. So I don't know if you saw this or not, but I just released a first episode of a web series that I just started called Tach Attempts, which is, I posted it on Facebook. I don't know if you'd seen it, but
I fucking hate Facebook because we're friends. We follow each other, and I didn't see it because of the way their algorithm is set up.
Yeah. But basically, because I do a lot of like music production, vocals, things like that. I've done a lot of vocal collaborations, like on YouTube and stuff like that with other people.
Yeah,
but this is like just my own thing where I'm just attempting different vocals, different genres. So my first episode is all about I did my rendition of the Rebel Yell by Billy Idol. So it's my version of that.
Well, I like to call it the Rebel Yell.
Yeah, Rebel Yell.
My whole life, everyone confuses my last name for Revol, like R-E-V as in Victor, for Rebel, because partially probably because my pronunciation. My whole life, my friends would always introduce me as Chris Rebel, And so I never corrected anyone because it's so much cooler to be a rebel than revel. But so when we were younger, like that was always like the song that would come on. My brother or my friends would sing it. Instead of the rebel yell, we go, with the rebel yell, you guys
Yeah. That's cool. I didn't think about that. That's
classic song. We should have you do that for the show. Like, with the rebel yell, let's chat more. We'll have you do our new theme song. But yeah, so tell me more about the series. This sounds so cool.
So, and then I even did a Facebook post about, hey, people, what do you guys want to hear me do next? And I gave a couple of, like suggestions, and then people would vote, or they would just tell me their own suggestions. And I actually got a lot of feedback. I was quite impressed with all the people. I thought it would just be a couple of my bros just doing like stupid suggestions, like, hey, dude, baby got back. Do the Brady Bunch theme song, something dumb,
That's actually what I was going to say. I was looking at the Facebook so I could put that down, but now you ruined it.
Sorry. But I actually got some really good feedback, and tons of people commented, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. All right. So my next one is going to be, because of the voting, is going to be Creep by Radiohead. I'm trying to pick songs that everybody knows. So things that are popular, things that your average Facebook person will click on. Not some of the esoteric stuff that you and I listen to, or I can do tons of like Slipknot covers, but that only reaches a very small population,
Are you gonna get the part of Creep where he gets the she?
No, I've sung the song before, and I don't do like the high falsetto. I'll just like get louder, which makes your voice go up more. So it's like she, like that. So.
No, I don't know that because you actually know how to sing like with you actually use your voice as a tool, where I just kind of scream terribly. Even my own 3-year-old tells me to stop singing. Like, Dad, stop! That's amazing, man. Should I pick some really bad? Not bad. That's the right word. Should I find some like obscure nu metal songs that no one would remember that only I love still?
Sure.
Like I would be like
stuff that I've already done or thinking about doing already anyway.
Did you ever listen to the band Head PE?
I know like one or two songs. Nothing. I've never really got into them though. But
yeah, I had a big rap metal phase, and I've been
listening. I used to get into all that shit too. Like all the Limp Bizkit type stuff. And
same here. And Korn's from Florida, right?
Korn? No, Korn's from Bakersfield. But Limp Bizkit, they're Jacksonville,
Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I actually used to hang out with the bass player from Limp Bizkit when I lived in Jacksonville for like.
Get the fuck out of here!
Yeah, I used to. When I had a band in Jacksonville, we recorded an album in his studio with him. He wasn't on the record, but he was like our engineer and shit like that.
Was he cool, dude?
So, oh fuck yeah, super down to earth, and like a lot of times I would forget who I'm hanging out with. Sam Rivers from Limp Bizkit. I used to forget all, because I remember we were in the studio, everybody would go home except me and him, and I remember sitting outside the studio with him smoking cigarette. Back when I used to smoke cigarettes, he was smoking cigarettes with him, bullshit until like 3:00 in the morning, just talking about everything from like religion to politics to aliens to like just he would tell me like Limp Bizkit touring stories.
Dude, get him on your podcast.
I know, right? I'm friends with him on Facebook, and not like his like professional, like his private Facebook.
Dude, I think you should do it because Limp Bizkit has there's probably a lot of. I'm not going to be a defender by any means, but like. They had such a rise in success and fame, and then all the shitstorm they had to do. And then being the bassist, he could kind of tuck in the back. Like, everyone knows Fred Durst, and everyone probably, maybe like more people like me know Wes Borland, but I don't know anyone else's name.
John Otto, I think he's the only one you're missing, I think, is the drummer. So
yeah, I don't know that. But I've had a similar experience. Like, a friend of a friend was friends with Sean, I want to say Martin is his name, but he played in Hatebreed. And like, he was already out of Hatebreed. He was working with the rapper Cage at the time, but I remember they played the show in Bristol, Connecticut, and like standing in the circle with Sean Astin or Martin, I forgot his name, from Hatebreed, another guy from Head Automatica, and just being, but like, same thing, within 10 minutes you kind of forget who people are, and then they just drop something about their Grammys, and you're like, wait, what? It's like, it is that weird feeling, but that would be crazy. But Limp Bizkit, man, that is a level of success that I don't think I've ever really talked to anyone on my podcast who's had that level of the zeitgeist. Like I've talked to people who've had like radio hits and done some really cool shit. Don't get me wrong, but Limp Bizkit is like There's people who don't like Limp Bizkit or even know their music, but you know who Limp Bizkit is. Like, they're part of the culture. Yeah,
for sure.
Usually for bad reasons.
Yeah, when I was in Jacksonville in the band, like, I was really tapped into that. And there was tons of talent coming out of Jacksonville, especially at the time.
Like, who else?
Tons of bands. Like even bands we were playing with were getting record deals left and right. We're like, what the fuck? Like, and, you know, it's just... And I remember being at a bar one night and hanging out with a buddy of mine watching bands play, and then this guy just knew, like, everybody in the industry. And all of a sudden he started bullshitting with this one dude. And so the three of us are kind of just standing there just talking, and they're just talking shop about music, guitars, whatever. And all of a sudden these two other guys come over that are in a band that are playing that night and start talking to him, and they ask him for his autograph. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy, you know? And so I went to my buddy. I was like, who the hell is this guy? And he's like, oh, he's a guitar player for... Do you remember the band Yellow Card from way back in the day?
Yeah. Oh, my God. They were huge.
Yeah, they were huge back. But they were from Jacksonville too. So,
right.
He was just there, just watching shows and stuff. And I didn't know I'd been bullshitting with this guitar player like for the past hour or so. I had no idea who the hell he was. And I remember the only person I recognized from that band was the lead singer because I'd seen videos and stuff. And
yeah.
I remember being in Target one night with this girl I was with at the time, and she loved Yellow Card, you know. And we were just walking through Target, and I was like, "Oh, check it out." She's like, "What?" I was like, "There's your boy from Yellow Card right down there." And she's like, "Nuh-uh." I was like, "He is too. Look at him." And she looks and she goes, "Oh my God, that is him." I was like, "You should go say something." She's like, No. And she didn't, but we left. But she's like, "That's so cool. He was in Target." I'm like, "Yeah." That's how it was.
That's funny. Yeah, I always wonder, like, what level of fame do you have to hit before you become, like, I don't know, like that level of, like you know, Yellow Card's pretty big, but they're still going to Target. Like, at what point do you, like, you must have to get to, like, Tom Cruise level where you don't go to Target anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, there's a certain level of fame where you probably, like, you're not going to the DMV anymore. You know?
I always wondered that, too. Like, you know, no matter who you are, you have to go to the DMV, right? But how come every time you have to go to the DMV, it's always full of, like, the lowest life in the DMV?
And that's where you forget that you yourself are that lowest life. And you're like, oh, I'm one of these people.
Another thing I want to talk about, too, is that I'm working on a TV show. Well, Jimmy and I are working on a TV show that we want to get done. We talked about this last time, I think we did. It's called This Veteran Life, and it's a reality show, and where each episode kind of talks about a veteran, kind of tells their story. Everything from, like, what they did in the military to the fun stuff they did in the military, and also to the really hard stuff to talk about as well. And it also showcases, like, their family and, you know, their wife or husband and stuff like that. And so, excuse me, it's kind of set to the tone of, like, Intervention, if you ever watched that kind of a tone to the show. And right now we've only shot our pilot episode, and I'm still kind of editing it, trying to get a good template and format for the show. And once I get back to Florida, hopefully sometime this summer, we're going to start and finish up the rest of the season and get it done. So
Dude, that is such a brilliant idea. And I know that because of the Brady podcast, you've been starting to get connected to some people within the industry. So, like, this isn't you're going to go for it for real, like, right? Like, this is like, I'm going to make this.
We're working on it. I mean, I've been a filmmaker. Yeah, I've been a filmmaker for years now, and just done a lot of freelance work, stuff like that. Some of my own stuff, some stupid videos and stuff that I made with friends or whatever. But we have started a production company called Attack Films, which is a play on my name, you know. And so we're just trying to get that going. Yeah.
So I've known Attack Films for a long time, but I never put that together. I think that's really clever.
Yeah. So that's the other thing we're also working on. We're always working on projects. So.
You don't sit still.
I don't. You know what really sucks is I am interested in way too much shit. Like, I want to do podcasting. I want to be in a band. I want to sing. I want to play guitar. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to, I have too much shit. I wish I just had one thing I was interested in, and that's it. But I don't. I want to do everything. So I'm spread really thin. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm just spread thin over a lot of different things.
Oh, yeah. I think that's what makes you a good host. And I've heard someone explain themselves this way, and made me really relate to it, is I think I fall to this. I have this personality where I'm either bored or overwhelmed, and there's no in between. And I'm really working on not being that anyway. Because like I'll be super overwhelmed with stuff and get so mad, and most of it's my own fault, and things start to fall by the wayside. And then I take a break, and then I get really bored. I'm like, let's start a new project. I'm like, well, shouldn't you finish the one you just started? So like, because sometimes it sucks. Like but like I'm sure you run into this too. Like just sometimes you get like inspiration or an idea and it's a really good idea, and then you have to like weigh it out, and some of the it's just like it's like do I do it for this as a podcast, or do I just give this idea to somebody else for someone else to do, but then they'll fuck it up, and then oh my god, it's so hard. It's so hard. Oh my god, I have that problem too. Like I just
I'll get an idea
one more time.
Yeah, I'll get an idea and get like super hyper focused on it too.
Yep.
I'll be like, and then I'll watch nothing but YouTube videos on that topic to learn everything I can learn about it.
Oh yeah.
And be like, this is my life now. This is what I'm going. And then a couple weeks later, it's something else.
I'm going to be a career mechanic or whatever. Or,
I'm going to get my private pilot's license. That was it for a long time.
Oh,
it was like a good month or two where I was like hyper focused. Like I'm going to get a private pilot's license.
Which funny for me was to start a podcast, and I actually did and kept it. But there's about a billion other projects I've started and didn't keep. This is the only one. But what I found was really nice for the format I ended up landing on for myself is that it kind of feeds into that feeling of like if I get really obsessed with something, I can then like let me try to bring a person on my podcast to talk to them about it as like a secret. Like, let's secretly be my friend or like bring me into your world. Like it's always helpful. Like you can look through some like all right, he must have been really watching Bob's Burgers when they were on, or he must have been in a real Disney afternoon when he was on, or like, or music, or like, I just get in if I get in a real ska mood, or if you look at the episodes, you can see you can kind of figure out like what podcast I was listening to, or like whatever. Like there's about 3 episodes we were talking before, like when I had like 3 up in a like I think 3 or 4. I had 3 like music episodes in a row that were all of the same world. I was like, I think it's pretty clear. Someone was really into like 90s, late 2000s emo ska between those like 3 episodes, because it went like we had Benny from the Gaslight Anthems, Pete from Streetlight Manifesto, and then we had Sean who made a documentary about Fat Wreck music. So that was like a 3-month obsession I was having on those types of music that manifest into the podcast. And all lovely people.
Never really got big on ska, but I don't know if I'm going to be shot for this. But
no one likes it. I'm the weird one.
I did like Less Than Jake a lot. Is
Florida.
that bad?
No, they're awesome.
Okay, good.
They're
that one album.
They're like
that one album was fucking fantastic.
Hello,
I can't remember the name of the album. Huh?
Hello, Rockview.
I don't know. I'd recognize the cover of it.
They're a Florida band. They're from Gainesville.
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
So one of the members is actually from the town I'm from, Meriden, Connecticut, or he's from Meriden or Wallingford. But one of the members is from where I'm from. So like where I grew up in Connecticut, everyone was like, "That's my cousin," or because it was like our one claim. Because there was a very popular of the time. There was a ska band called Spring Hill Jack that had some success, and then I think their singer died unexpectedly, and then every member of that band went off into like another big. Would go off into like Less Than Jake or Westbound Train or Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Real Big Fish. All right, I'll stop scouting you.
I remember Real Big Fish too. Like, the album was Losing Streak was the name of the album.
Oh, that's they had that hit too. They're fucking great. No, people, and they own a record label. One of them owns a record label, Paper and Plastic. Those are they're goats. Those are the goats of the. They're the kind of band that people who hate ska like them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Man, this is so great. So, how long have you been podcasting now? Are we talking like since Tate Funny? Are you like 7-8 years? Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's about right. Mm-hmm.
I'm turning 7. This show turned 7 this month.
That's awesome.
July or August, I think in August. I actually don't really know when it started, but we're just gonna. My birthday is in August, and so I think I decided I'm just gonna. I know I was trying to figure out when we first started, but I think it was around this time, so I think we're just gonna make August our official anniversary, and
that works. Yeah. So you're wearing a Star Wars shirt. I just want to get your quick overall take
you're gonna hate
on
me.
the current Star Wars movie. I personally, I don't care what anybody else says. It's always whiny millennials that are complaining.
Sure.
I thought they were fantastic. I thought they were
I
great.
loved them.
And thank you.
And I have to put this caveat out there. My wife's not home, thankfully, because she's the Star Wars nerd. I don't get into Star Wars until The Force Awakens. So for me, it was all like brand new. I don't like I never saw the originals. I didn't like them as a kid. I saw the first prequel in 10th grade. Didn't really have much of an opinion. Hated Star Wars fan my whole life. And then when The Force Awakens, and then I married into a Star Wars family. So I really, really, really like the new ones. I think the criticism of the last one people had was pretty valid, but I also don't care. I guess, you know what I mean about it? Like, I don't have any strong opinion to it. I'll put it this way. When I was watching The Rise of Skywalker, I didn't know who Snoke was.
Well, he was from the movie before it, so it's not like he was from a long time ago because it wasn't.
Yeah, so that worked for me because that was a big surprise. I was like, oh my god. And then Mandalorian, I would say, is my favorite of all the things.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
That's really
hands out, clapping for Jon Favreau, man.
Right?
That guy. He's
Do you watch
fantastic.
Do you watch the Galleria, the making of the Mandalorian documentary series?
Not yet. I haven't yet, but I will.
As a filmmaker, you need to watch it.
I love behind the scenes stuff.
Me too. There's also the first episode is kind of in the style. I don't know if you ever watched it, but there was Jon Favreau a long time ago used to have this a short-lived TV show called Dinner for Five, which is kind of like a podcast before a podcast, where he would have 5 different.
Oh yeah. It's like a round table or whatever.
Yeah. So the first episode is a round table of all the directors. But then every episode's different. But they have a whole episode about the new technology that they created to make The Mandalorian.
I did see something on that, the technology with the cameras and how the backgrounds were only where the camera was shooting.
Yeah, they call it a volume, which basically it looks like a gigantic room of televisions, and they use a gaming engine instead of a green screen. I don't understand what any of it meant, but it was cool. Then there's a whole episode about the Baby Yoda. There's an entire episode about the music. The last episode they just literally go through and explain every Easter egg they put in The Mandalorian from the originals.
Nice.
You get the sense from watching the people who made The Mandalorian, like, they love Star Wars more than anyone. Like, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. Like, Kathleen Kennedy literally says it's like watching 2 12-year-old boys play in the sandbox. Like, and they really are. When you hear them talk, they're such nerds about this shit. They love it so much. And they did such a good job. Like, I watched it again the other night. We just watched the last episode for like the 5th time because it just got that when fucking the IG-11, it's like, I was never really alive, and blows up, like, tears.
Yeah.
Except it's hard for me because my wife is such a Star Wars person where she's like super annoying to watch it with because like, well, actually, that's the Darksaber or something that was first on Mandalore, and we're like, what? Like, again, and let me show to make fun of myself some more of my lack of Star Wars fandom, because I do like it. Is I didn't know the Mandalorian wasn't a robot until it took his helmet off. If anyone, I'm pretty high when I watch it.
You understand that stormtroopers are also not robots, right?
I didn't know that till John Boyega took off his helmet. I honestly had nothing to do. I hated Star Wars fans so much for so long. I just completely avoided it.
Well, what's so funny is that you remind me of Jimmy. This is Jimmy's marriage too, by the way. Jimmy has no interest in Star Wars. I mean, he's seen some Star Wars movies. Doesn't hate them. Doesn't dislike them. Just has no interest. Right, but his wife, huge Star Wars fanatic, huge Star Wars nerd. And so, you'll catch him, too, also wearing Star Wars shirts. And people come up and talk to him Star Wars. And he's like, I saw Star Wars, once, a long time ago.
She bought me the
and
shirt.
Exactly, that's his thing, too. My wife buys it for me, so, I just wear it. I don't care.
I know it's the Millennium Falcon, but I only know that because of the Last Jedi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I really like The Last Jedi. I think it's my favorite of all of them.
Yeah, I like it.
I actually interviewed someone who was in the Force Awakens.
Yeah, I know. I listened to that episode. That was awesome. I actually tried to get her also, and I can't remember if I talked to her. I think I talked to her. I can't even remember now. It's been so long.
It's a fucking... At some point, I don't remember anything anymore. So, Tach, this has been fucking delightful as always. So thank you. But where is there anything else we missed? And if not, where can people find you online?
Well, the usual spots. Anywhere that you find this show, you can find A Very Brady Podcast. What we do is we celebrate the iconic TV show, The Brady Bunch, and we break it down one episode at a time, and we have a blast with it. It all is done in fun and love, but it is so much fun to break down, and we come up with all kinds of fun conspiracies that we make up on the fly that are just awesome, and they hold water sometimes as the episodes go on. You're like, holy shit, remember that conspiracy theory we thought of last week about Alice? It's still holding true in this episode too, so check it out.
Oh, thank you so much. And are you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of that stuff?
I think everywhere. Yeah, just search Very Brady Podcast, or you can search me, Tach Van Sickel, so anywhere.
Awesome.